So I'm curious if Kellogg is actually sweetening the pie for these guys and giving them maybe some of the demands that the strikers are asking for.
Maybe putting sugar on its cereal?
Yeah,
You said
frosting those flakes.
Frosting those flakes.
What's interesting is, so they're putting out these jobs, and a bunch of people on Reddit actually started spamming the job postings for the scabs and succeeded in taking the website down. So it seems like there's a bit of a public response to all of this that you don't always see with this kind of labor. I think you make a good point about the supply chain crunch and sort of giving workers a better hand to negotiate in these kinds of situations. A little noticed economic strategy document that the Biden administration put out recently basically said that we are willing and we need to repatriate production back in the U.S. Because what they've learned from the coronavirus crisis is that when we need our PPE, when we need goods and services that we depend on from China, that gives them a lot of power geopolitically to have us reliant on them in those ways. And so I think there are a number of factors that have sort of aligned that are giving labor a sort of advantage here.
Yeah, as you mentioned, social media users are taking action on behalf of the workers. Redditors have been spamming Kellogg's job portals in solidarity with the strikers. And here's a user on TikTok who revealed how to fight this effort digitally. Let's watch.
Apparently, Kellogg's is planning to replace workers who are fighting for better workplace conditions and better pay. And so people over at the anti-work subreddit have found out they're using these websites to do it, these locations. So you know what I had to do? You know how to cook up a little something, you know? I'm not going to try to explain exactly what this does. I'm just going to show you. Go ahead and run the code. Paste when I ran on one of the 4 websites. Starts up an application. You need to sign in. Okay, well, it goes through the process of signing in. Goes ahead and does the privacy agreement itself. Goes ahead and creates an account. Oh, and then it fills everything else in. All of it, including filling out the resume. And then it automatically applies. Application has been sent. And in case you're wondering, yes, all the data is relevant data. Zip codes match, cities match, states match, it all matches up perfectly. I'm still working on the rest of the fields, but not bad for a day's work, I'd say.
It's no surprise that creditors in this instance are very eager to start reclaiming money back. Even though I want to be really clear, the reason the student debt cancellation policy is such a political no-brainer and is not something that's being paid by the taxpayer. It's not something, as many have argued, as some have argued, that it's working class people paying for college-educated elites. It's because the federal government holds this debt. In fact, the federal government has been profiting handily on the student debt payments of ordinary working, trying to get a leg up middle-class families, right? And so it's on the federal government simply to cancel that debt, to decline to recall those payments. And instead, it is deciding it's going to continue to seek out middle-class voters as a revenue source at the very same time that Joe Biden is more than happy to hold out people who earn $400,000 a year as middle class and say, oh, I'm absolutely not going to raise taxes on this cohort, but I'm completely fine with pulling $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a month from kids who just wanted to go to college so they could potentially become, public interest lawyers, teachers, social workers, all these kinds of jobs that require you to get an advanced degree, but don't actually pay especially high incomes. Those people are going to have to go back to the bank and start making these recurring payments in the middle of this tragedy. And you see those very teachers that were crawling around on the ground at the beginning of this segment, Hunger Games style, are the exact same cohort that is being asked to go ahead and repay their loans, because those teachers absolutely were required to get college degrees to take those jobs.
Isn't the okay? So to attempt to portray the other side of this, or where someone who doesn't quite share the enthusiasm for this policy you two have. It should be easier to become a teacher. You shouldn't need 80 trillion advanced degrees and 10 years of college debt to become a teacher.
You just need one, Robbie. You just need a 4-year degree, sometimes a master's. But those 4-year degrees, even from not especially prestigious institutions are extremely expensive. Even state schools are extremely expensive. People have tried to frame this as an issue of elite colleges, but what, 0.3% of all college graduates in America go to Ivy League schools? Many of those people become teachers and public servants, by the way. But never mind. Huge parts of our working class, white-collar jobs and blue-collar jobs require these kinds of degrees. We live in an economy that does, and just like we have free high school because we evolved into an economy that required that level of education, people shouldn't be going into deep debt or any debt at all, I would argue, to get the basic educational requirements that allow our country to thrive and prosper.
Many of us think at some point all of this has to end. People can only tolerate so much and will naturally relax even if the government doesn't. If places like New York and California want visitors to come spend money in their states at their tourist attractions, entertainment, and restaurants, they can't continue to have all of these various different restrictions and mandates. Same with international travel. If countries want visitors from around the world, they're going to have to ease up on these vaccine requirements, especially since the WHO claims studies coming out of Europe are showing the main spreaders of Omicron are young, fully vaccinated people. A lot of young people get vaccinated because they want to live their lives free of restrictions. With unvaccinated people restricted on where they can and cannot go, it's the fully vaccinated young people who are able to attend the super spreader events that have contributed to the super spreading of the new variant. Either way, what's the new norm going to look like? Will people just accept that possibly Omicron or a different future variant has mutated to the point where it's not much more than the common cold? Or will people demand triple and quadruple vaccinations paired with masking every single winter? I think for a long time now, a lot of people have thought the restrictions would end. But time and time again, they've not only not ended, but they've continued to ramp up. So I think it's a pretty reasonable question to wonder what the new norm is going to look like when COVID finally becomes endemic. And if it looks like anything, what this CNBC article is describing, the new normal is going to make a lot of new enemies. So, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm curious, Ryan, from your take, because you're the one with kids, if it became the new normal where kids had to mask every single winter, how do you think parents would react to that?
Well, I think they would revolt, and I don't think we'll get that for that reason, because I think some of this is an emperor's new clothes type of situation where you have support for some of these policies, tenuous right now because we're still, we're seeing a massive surge, we're still in the pandemic, but also because people feel like it's socially what other people are supporting, but it's not as strong as people think it is. So once it starts to crumble, I think it could collapse even in these blue areas. You're seeing a lot of parents, who are really frustrated at the idea of their kid having to, eat outside in the cold with their mask and take the mask down and eat and put it back, which a lot of kids do, because they've had this instilled in them. So I don't think we'll see, and part of it depends on how the pandemic unfolds. But I don't think parents, blue, red, or otherwise, would tolerate masking in schools becoming endemic.
And it was one thing. I mean, I've been against all of these restrictions for except for the initial 2 weeks to slow the spread. I was against them after that. But there was at least an argument to make that, we need to really mask up, socially distance, lock down, because 10 months from now, we're going to have vaccines, we're going to know a lot more about the disease, and so that's just the period. So you had an end point in mind, but that keeps getting pushed. And now it's just COVID is never going away. It's going to be with us at least for years, if not forever. And there will always be some new thing. It might be a new variant, or it might be a new therapeutic. There's always going to be, the situation will be a little bit different months from now. But we can't ask people to put their lives on hold, even the people we need to protect, even elderly people. I mean, are you going to say, those of us who have grandparents, they don't have all the time left in the world. Are you going to say, you can't see your grandkids for the next 5 years? They might not still be here in 5 years. The argument for heavily restricting the lives, even of the people who continue to be at risk, starts to fall apart if you're going to say, that's just the rest of your life until you die. I mean, if people who are at risk want to voluntarily do that, okay. But a lot of them are going to say, I will take whatever some slight small risk there is, because I would like to enjoy the time I have left on Earth.